Hello everyone, welcome to the latest edition of From Darkness to Light, where we talk about people who are faced with challenges. And I think this is a really important segment we're doing now. I don't really need to introduce the person in front of me, but I will in a second anyway. The reason why this is important is because some of the series until now have been like major, almost life and death type challenges. We had a couple of people on who are battling with cancer, we had fertility issues, we had miscarriage issues. We're changing the tone slightly, which are probably closer towards the challenges that me and you face on a daily or weekly or monthly basis, which are challenges of expectation and of scenarios and situations changing, how we deal with that, how we cope with those. I don't know, James, you call it macro challenges, maybe micro challenges?
A mix.
Right. And what I've found also is that for different people, small challenges can become massive challenges. It depends on them. It depends on their time of life. It depends on their expectations. So let's shoot into this. So, of course, I'm here with James Harris. He is the president of UJS. We're very proud of him, if we can figuratively adopt being your parents for a couple of seconds. We are, as a community, very, very proud of what you've got on to achieve. And let's talk about your personal story in terms of UJS, and then let's talk about students as a whole. So let's take it back. When did you start with UJS, and what were your expectations for the year?
So thank you very much, Rabbi, for having me on. I guess I was really active in uni, like within my JSOC. For those, I guess, watching who don't know, JSOC is like a university Jewish society specific to a university. So it was like my thing to get involved with. So some people do sports, some people get involved with music and different clubs and societies. My thing was JSOC. And I was very involved in my first year, and I continued to stay involved really after I stopped being president of JSOC. I continued to be involved in UJS, and UJS is affiliated to 68, I believe it is, maybe it's 69 at this point, Jewish societies.
Wow.
And we support Jewish societies directly, but obviously we also support Jewish students on a more individual level. So I mean, look, my expectations for UJS when I ran for election, I got elected just over a year ago, and
pre-pandemic.
Yeah, very, very much pre-pandemic. I campaigned in person. I was traveling the country. It was a different world almost from now. And my expectations were this year that I would be traveling the country, that I would be, a different Friday night every week at a different university, and I would be meeting with thousands of students, day in, day out. But obviously, that isn't possible.
Oh.
But I think despite the challenges of not being able to meet people in person and the restrictions and the rules and everything in place, I think there's such a clear vision for me and also for Jewish students as well, who really do want Jewish life to continue on campus despite, as I say, everything happening.
It's funny, it's almost like the goal kind of hasn't changed, just the way we get there is totally completely changed.
Exactly, and I think this year, and I'm sure we'll get onto it, but this year has been, and no doubt will present a completely new set of challenges in the next year. But despite that, there's been a huge opportunity to completely revitalize everything that we've been doing, and to see, what have we been doing well, and we'll continue that in a different way, and what can we be doing completely differently or better. And that's been a really great privilege to be a part of that.
Amazing. So let's turn it personal, then we'll talk about students. How did you feel? I mean, you had certain expectations and goals coming to the role. I guess there was a certain platform or a certain manifesto, if you like, that you almost campaigned on, and now everything changes. So like, how do you deal with that? Was that debilitating? Was that empowering? What did that feel like? I can't even begin to imagine that.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely tough. It's I think it would be tough for anyone starting a new job, in this climate. But my manifesto hasn't changed. I've got it printed off, not with me, but in our office, which obviously at this point we can't go to. Yeah, I've got it like pinned up, and that hasn't changed at all. But obviously, as you said before, like the way in which we're fulfilling our objectives and fulfilling our aims has changed, which is interesting because it's making me think on my toes a bit. What should we be doing differently than I had planned? And actually, can this work in this way? And it's really great to be able to think in a completely different way to any of my predecessors.
Amazing. So it sounds like the way you coped with it is to basically change gears and saying, right, we can't.
Effectively, yeah. And I think whether out of habit or necessity, we've all had to sort of change in some way. Just adapting has been a core part of this pandemic, and we've had to do it.
Right, that's quite important. That's like resilience in an almost inverse fashion. Normally we talk about resilience, we talk about staying strong and rooted, etc. But this is a resilience through being able to quickly adapt, which I guess necessitates roots. I feel the same sometimes in STEM, or we try and religiously plan. I don't mean religious events, but religiously plan, for 8 months time, 9 months time, like a calendar. We try and put out a brochure at the beginning for Rosh Hashanah, almost carrying us through to June. And then it's like, well, hold on a second. Everything beyond 3 weeks is like, great at the moment.
Yeah, well, that's similar with us. And obviously we had our core events, but even some of our core events, year on year, just had to be completely cancelled or had to be completely redone. And in some ways, those events have worked better. In some ways, they haven't, just because of the times. But in that sense, we've all had to change, for better or for worse.
Right. Well, good. It sounds like you definitely weren't dashed by those changing circumstances, which is fantastic. And it sounds like you kind of like what's the word? Run with the blows, or duck the punches. Run with the punches.
Yeah. Yeah. Rose to the challenges.
That's the word. Very good. Yeah, sure. There's a Yiddish equivalent I should probably know. Right. Okay. So that's your personal take, and that's your personal story and journey. Now, what about students in general? What are their challenges? I guess the hard thing, I don't know if I'm just assuming too much, is that the UJS of Jewish students is dealing with Jewish students who normally have very Jewish issues. So it might be anti-Semitism on campus, it might be elements of Israel advocacy, it might be Friday night dinners. Now we've got something which is suddenly kind of facing all students in terms of pandemic and isolation and elements of that. But of course, we're dealing with Jewish students. So what are their challenges? How do you face that? What do you see? And how do you think they are coping?
Sure. So I think, one key thing to remember is obviously that it's quite an obvious thing, but sometimes we need reminding, is that Jewish students are students as well, and are Jewish. So Jewish students will have the same problems in some senses as everyone else, but in a more specific way. So let's take self-isolation, for example. In September, October time, there were huge amounts of students self-isolating, and clearly that presented challenges for like thousands of students across the country. Things like students couldn't get grocery shopping, students couldn't get clean clothes, which was just really, really terrible. Yeah, but if you then narrow it down and you pinpoint the issues of Jewish students who are self-isolating, we launched a survey basically as a plea for help for any Jewish students who were self-isolating and in a real need. And we got people coming to us saying, well, yes, we don't have groceries, but further to that, we don't have things like kosher meat, which obviously for any random student, they could probably just order a chicken from Sainsbury's or something.
Right.
And then there are obviously those students who who need kosher food and who didn't have that. So we basically were the facilitator for that
Yeah.
for like those essentials.
That's incredible.
I mean, that's just one of the ways in which, we spotted the challenges quite early on. And then we, as before, adapted to the situation. And we, there were people who said, we don't have food, we don't have Friday night dinner. And within an hour of them telling us, we had Friday night dinner at their doorstep.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
So yeah, that was, I think, really, really special to be able to do. It's amazing that we can fight anti-Semitism, and we can stand up for Israel, and we can really like put on great events and host great speakers. But when students aren't necessarily getting like the bare essentials, aren't getting 3 meals a day, aren't getting clean clothes, then that's our job, our obligation really to step in. And that was really quite special, quite powerful for me.
Wow, that's incredible. Well noticed as well. Really, really well noticed and well adapted. Gosh, wow. So it sounds like their struggles were some of the basics, really. But I guess probably as well as delivering the food, it's the fact that they feel that people care for them. That they're not alone in that sense. That probably
for sure,
a lot.
For sure. Yeah, and it was the idea that someone, like an actual person, was coming to their flat or to their halls to hand deliver a cooked meal, and that was just, I think, really, really special for the students.
Amazing. Do you see, I guess I could just see the clock ticking. Do you see any other elements of coping or resilience that students, something that the students are employing, the students are living by, anything else that's kind of surprised you in a good way?
Well, look, I think, one of the sort of, as we said before, the adaptability and I think the resilience as well of students during the time, and having to really look at what they're doing and see, is, for example, a Friday night dinner on campus in person feasible to do? And some JSOCs have said yes, absolutely. The rules are completely fine. They allow us to do it in this way. Obviously not in the same way, but in a COVID secure way. Yeah. And some JSOCs have said absolutely not. We are providing, we're hand delivering meals every week to every student who signs up. And so, the difference, I think, in every campus has different rules, every area has different regulations and restrictions. And so that's been really, really hard for students to know what to do. And so we've clearly had to step in and provide that support, filling out risk assessment forms, even small things like, which caterer to contact, because some caterers might not cater in a certain area. Right. So it has been difficult, certainly for students. I guess from a UJS standpoint, and potentially this is a little bit of advice to take home is the wrong word, but to take away is, one of the things I've been trying to do. Obviously, I think his work-life balance is increasingly hard to achieve, when everyone's working from home. Yeah. And one of the things I've been trying to do has been just, for an hour or so a day, just switching my phone off. And I think especially, UJS life is completely digital. Young people love technology, love online, but not necessarily when we're being forced to use it. So I think, when that element of free choice has obviously been taken away right now. And I think, one of the ways I've tried to sort of maintain some level of normality has been switching off my phone and doing something that doesn't require going on my phone. And actually, I can leave my phone in a box or in a drawer, so I don't have to look at it. And then I can read or go for a walk or something. I just will not bring my phone with, let alone have it on.
That's amazing. That's really, really important. I can't tell you the people who, look, I'm an early riser, so sometimes I send messages early in the morning and they say, well, you've woken me up. And I said, why on earth do you have your WhatsApp on if you're asleep at 5:30, 6 in the morning? This well, it may be an emergency. I said, well, they've got your house line or whatever. It's, you're right. People are, do have I don't call it addiction, but a something, a lean to their phone.
No, for sure.
At the start of the pandemic, I remember it was mad, messages left, right, and center. Do you remember? It just the
Yeah, well, that's the thing. That's how I sort of learned to cope with, I guess, the onslaught of messages and of calls and emails and everything. And I did that by just, for an hour a day, just turning off. Yeah, and I think, broadly speaking, whether it's during my lunch break, I'll turn it off, or just after I finish work, I'll turn it off. And the world, I think the key thing is the world isn't going to completely change in an hour. And so, I'll come back in an hour's time, and if something has come up, then either someone else might have taken care of it, and if not, then worst comes to the worst, it's half an hour or 15 minutes later than planned, and it's actually not the end of the world. And it's better that I cope and that I'm on form and able to take on those challenges, rather than I'm burnt out and I've been taking emails and calls and everything all day.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think the official term is the private cost of public office, which is very important to not fall into the break, not fall into the trap. James, it's been incredible. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. Keep doing good stuff. Really, keep it up. It's amazing to hear, firstly, that you've risen to the challenge, and then the coping mechanisms within that, both personally and then for the students in general. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And
thank you for having me.
That's fine. Thank you. And for all the viewers, just remember to hit subscribe. It's the Stanmore YouTube channel. Search YouTube, Stanmore Synagogue. Thank you so much.